Welcome, brave souls, to another chilling tale from the Nightmare Maestro. What happens when the mask you wear becomes the face you can't remove? Tonight, we'll explore the terrifying consequences of losing oneself to the very disguise meant to conceal. Welcome to a Halloween party where the costumes are more than just fabric and makeup. They're gateways to madness. The envelope arrived without postmark or return address, its black wax seal embossed with an intricate design of intertwined faces. Inside, an invitation promised an exclusive Halloween masquerade at the newly renovated Thornhaven Manor. 6 strangers across the city received identical invitations, each feeling an inexplicable compulsion to attend. Olivia, a high-powered lawyer, traced her fingers over the raised lettering. She hadn't planned on celebrating Halloween, but something about the mysterious summons intrigued her. Across town, Marcus, a struggling artist, stared at his invitation with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. The promise of networking opportunities at such an elite gathering was too tempting to pass up. In her cramped apartment, Elena, a night shift nurse, puzzled over how she'd been selected for such an event. She couldn't shake the feeling that accepting the invitation might be a grave mistake. Meanwhile, Dr. James Chen, a brilliant but reclusive scientist, saw the party as a rare chance to step out of his comfort zone. Tyrell, a former athlete turned personal trainer, was drawn to the air of luxury surrounding the event. And finally, Zara, an ambitious social media influencer, practically salivated at the thought of the content she could create at such an exclusive gathering. As Halloween approached, each of the 6 prepared for the masquerade, unaware of the transformative night that awaited them. They selected their costumes with care, not realizing the profound impact their choices would have on their fates. The night of October 31st arrived, shrouded in an unseasonable fog that clung to the city like a funeral shroud. Thornhaven Manor loomed against the misty backdrop, its Gothic spires piercing the low-hanging clouds. A line of sleek cars and limousines snaked up the winding driveway, depositing costumed revelers at the grand entrance. Olivia stepped out of her car, adjusting the ornate Venetian mask that obscured the upper half of her face. The moment she placed it against her skin, a curious sensation rippled through her body, a fleeting chill that she dismissed as pre-party jitters. Inside, the manor had been transformed into a labyrinth of opulence and shadow. Crystal chandeliers cast prismatic light across the ballroom, while dark corners harbored secrets and whispered promises. The air thrummed with an otherworldly bass line, the music seeming to penetrate flesh and bone. Marcus arrived next, his artist's eye drinking in the decadent surroundings. His mask, a monstrous visage inspired by Hieronymus Bosch, felt unusually warm against his face. As he moved through the crowd, he could have sworn he felt the mask's expression shift, mirroring his own wonder. Elena entered cautiously, her nurse's instincts on high alert. Her simple domino mask belied the unease churning in her stomach. With each passo she took deeper into the party, the mask seemed to mold more closely to her features, as if eager to become one with her skin. Dr. Chen arrived precisely at the stroke of 10, his face concealed behind an elaborate plague doctor's mask. The moment he crossed the threshold, a wave of dizziness washed over him. He steadied himself against a marble column, unaware that the mask's long beak had momentarily twitched of its own accord. Tyrell made a grand entrance, his muscular frame accentuated by a skin-tight costume and a fearsome warrior's mask. As he surveyed the room with predatory eyes, searching for potential conquests, he failed to notice how the mask's snarl deepened, reflecting his own hunger. Last to arrive was Zara, fashionably late and dressed to kill. Her social media followers had chosen her costume, a shimmering siren, complete with a mask that seemed to capture the very essence of the sea. As she raised her phone to snap her first selfie of the night, the camera's flash illuminated a terrifying truth. For a split second, the mask's eyes blinked. As the night progressed, the six strangers found themselves drawn together, an invisible thread of fate pulling them into each other's orbits. They gathered near a Baroque fountain in the center of the ballroom, exchanging names and admiring each other's costumes. But beneath the surface of polite conversation, something was changing. Olivia felt a surge of cold confidence coursing through her veins. The usual filter between her thoughts and words began to dissolve, and she found herself speaking with a cruel honesty that both thrilled and horrified her. "Your mask is exquisite," she told Zara, her voice dripping with condescension, "almost as artificial as your online persona." Zara recoiled, but not before a flash of rage contorted her features. Or was it the mask itself that twisted in anger? She felt an overwhelming urge to document every moment, every slight, to share it with her followers and feed off their reactions. Her fingers flew across her phone's screen, her eyes taking on the glassy sheen of her siren's mask. Marcus, typically reserved, felt a wild creative energy building within him. His perceptions began to blur, the opulent ballroom transforming into a nightmarish canvas. He pulled out a sketch pad, his hands moving of their own accord, as he captured the grotesque visions swirling in his mind. The lines between art and reality blurred with each frenzied stroke. Elena's nurturing instincts warped into something far more sinister. She found herself analyzing each person she encountered, diagnosing imaginary ailments and contemplating radical treatments. "You know," she whispered to Dr. Chen, her voice unsettlingly calm, "I could cure what ails you with just a few simple incisions." Dr. Chen barely registered Elena's disturbing words. His scientific mind was racing, piecing together a grand theory that would revolutionize the world or destroy it. The plague doctor's mask seemed to whisper ancient secrets, filling his head with visions of purging humanity of its weaknesses through means both brilliant and horrific. Tyrell's athletic prowess twisted into raw aggression. He felt invincible, godlike, with an overwhelming urge to dominate everyone around him. His muscles coiled beneath his costume, ready to spring into violent action at the slightest provocation. The warrior's mask pulsed in time with his quickening heartbeat, feeding his primal urges. As midnight approached, the six strangers realized with growing horror that something was terribly wrong. Their masks no longer felt like simple accessories. They had become extensions of their flesh, their very beings, and with each passing moment, the line between their true selves and the dark avatars they had chosen for one night of revelry grew dangerously thin. The realization of their predicament hit each of them like a physical blow. Panic rippled through the group as they clawed at their masks, desperate to remove the source of their transformations. But the masks clung to their skin with terrifying tenacity, sending jolts of pain through their bodies with each attempt to pry them off. "We have to get these things off," Olivia hissed, her usual composure crumbling as she felt her identity slipping away. "There has to be a way to break whatever spell this is." Dr. Chen's scientific mind raced, trying to apply logic to their illogical situation. "Perhaps it's a chemical reaction," he mused, his voice muffled behind the plague doctor's beak. "We need to find the source, the common denominator." As they debated their options, the party around them continued unabated. The other guests seemed oblivious to their plight, lost in the hedonistic revelry of the masquerade. The music grew louder, more frenzied, matching the rising desperation of the six afflicted strangers. Marcus, His artist's eye, sharp despite the madness creeping in, noticed a hidden door behind a heavy velvet curtain. "There," he pointed with a trembling hand. "Maybe we can find answers in the heart of this cursed place." They slipped away from the ballroom, unnoticed by the writhing mass of costumed figures. The hidden door led to a narrow, spiraling staircase that descended into the bowels of the manor. The air grew thick and oppressive as they ventured deeper, the walls seeming to pulse with malevolent energy. Zara, unable to resist, live-streamed their descent. "If we don't make it out of here," she whispered to her phone, her voice tinged with both fear and excitement, "at least the world will know what happened to us." At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves in a circular chamber lined with ancient mirrors. Each reflective surface showed a different version of themselves, past, present, and terrifying futures, where their mask transformations were complete. Tyrell, overcome with rage and fear, lashed out at his reflection. The mirror shattered, and for a brief moment, they all felt a lessening of the mask's hold. "The mirrors!" Elena gasped, understanding dawning in her eyes. "They're the key to breaking the curse." A plan formed quickly. They would shatter the mirrors, using the breaking of their reflected selves to sever the connection between their true identities and the masks that sought to consume them. But as they steeled themselves for action, a low chuckle echoed through the chamber. They turned to find they were no longer alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, clad in an elaborate jester's costume. The newcomer's mask was a twisted visage of mirth and malice, its expression shifting between laughter and sneers with unnatural fluidity. "Welcome, my dear guests," the jester crooned, spreading their arms wide. "I see you've discovered the heart of our little game." Olivia stepped forward, her lawyer's instincts kicking in despite the mask's influence. "Who are you? What have you done to us?" she demanded, her voice a mixture of authority and barely contained panic. The jester twirled, their laughter echoing off the mirrored walls. "I've given you a gift, the opportunity to become your truest selves, freed from the masks you wear every day in your dull, ordinary lives." Dr. Chen's scientific mind raced, trying to reconcile the impossible with what he knew of reality. "This defies all logic," he muttered, his fingers tracing the edges of his plague doctor's mask. "How is this possible? Science? Logic?" The jester scoffed. "Tonight is a night of magic and transformation. Embrace it. Let the masks show you who you really are beneath all those careful pretenses." As the jester spoke, the six felt the masks' pull intensify. Their reflected selves gazed back at them with hungry eyes, urging them to surrender to the transformation. Tyrell's muscles bunched, ready to lash out at their tormentor, while Zara's fingers twitched towards her phone, desperate to capture every moment of this surreal encounter. Marcus, his artist's soul resonating with the twisted beauty of their situation, found himself torn between horror and fascination. "But why us?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Why were we chosen for this experiment?" The jester's mask split into a wide, unnatural grin. "Why not you? 6 strangers, each wearing masks long before you ever set foot in this mansion. The lawyer who buries her compassion, the scientist who denies his humanity, the nurse who secretly craves power over life and death, the athlete running from his past, the artist afraid of his own vision, and the influencer desperate for authenticity in a curated world." Helena, fighting against the dark urges her mask amplified, saw a glimmer of hope. "If we're wearing these masks by choice," she reasoned, her nurse's calm assertion battling with rising panic, "then we can choose to remove them." The jester wagged a finger. "Ah, but it's not so simple. The masks you wear now are merely reflections of the ones you've worn all your lives. Removing them means confronting the darkest parts of yourselves. Are you truly prepared for that? As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the six strangers faced a harrowing choice: embrace the dark aspects of themselves that the masks revealed, or fight against the transformation and risk losing themselves entirely. The jester watched with gleeful anticipation, eager to see which path they would choose. With the mirrors surrounding them, reflecting infinite versions of their struggle, the group steeled themselves for the most important decision of their lives. The masks pulsed with dark energy, and the very air seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see who would emerge victorious. The individuals they once were, or the embodiments of their deepest, darkest selves. The chamber of mirrors became a battleground of the soul, as each of the six fought their own internal war. The jester danced between them, a catalyst of chaos, whispering taunts and temptations. Olivia was the first to make her stand. With a primal scream that shattered her composed exterior, she slammed her fist into the nearest mirror. The glass splintered, and with it, the icy grip of ruthless ambition that had begun to freeze her heart. "I am more than my success," she gasped, feeling the mask's hold weaken. Inspired by her act of defiance, Marcus faced his reflection. The grotesque visage that stared back at him was a manifestation of his darkest creative impulses. With trembling hands, he reached for his sketch pad. Instead of fleeing from the nightmarish visions, he began to draw, channeling the darkness into his art. As he created, the mask's influence waned, unable to compete with the catharsis of true artistic expression. Dr. Chen struggled against the whispering promises of forbidden knowledge. The plague doctor's mask urged him to abandon ethics in pursuit of scientific breakthrough. Gritting his teeth, he recited the Hippocratic Oath, each word a declaration of his commitment to healing, not harm. The mask's beak cracked, a fissure spreading across its surface. Elena's battle was silent but no less fierce. The urge to control, to decide the fate of others, pulled at her very being. She closed her eyes, remembering every life she'd helped save, every patient she'd comforted. Gradually, her nurturing instincts reasserted themselves, pushing back against the mask's dark influence. Tyrell roared, his warrior's mask amplifying every aggressive impulse. He raised his fists, ready to destroy everything around him, when his gaze fell upon his reflection. Behind the snarling visage, he saw echoes of the frightened boy he'd once been, the one who'd turned to sports as a sanctuary. Understanding dawned, and with it, the strength to lower his fists and face his vulnerabilities. Zara's fingers flew across her phone's screen, desperate to share every moment of their ordeal. But as she stared at the glowing display, she saw the hollowness of her curated online existence. With a sharp intake of breath, she turned the camera on herself, not to showcase a perfect image, but to capture the raw, unfiltered truth of her struggle. As authenticity flowed through her, the siren's mask began to lose its luster. The jester's laughter faltered as, one by one, the six began to reclaim themselves. Their masked reflections in the mirrors grew dim, overshadowed by the emergence of their true selves. As the last chime of midnight faded, the masks fell away, disintegrating into glittering dust. Dawn broke over Thornhaven Manor, painting the Gothic spires in hues of gold and crimson. The six strangers stumbled out into the crisp morning air, forever changed by their night of terror and transformation. They gathered on the dew-covered lawn, blinking in the harsh light of day. The manor behind them stood silent, any evidence of the masquerade erased as if it had never been. Only the haunted looks in their eyes and the phantom sensation of masks on their faces remained as proof of their ordeal. Olivia, her hair disheveled and her costume in tatters, looked at each of them in turn. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice hoarse from screaming. Dr. Chen rubbed his face, as if still expecting to feel the smooth surface of the plague doctor's mask. "We live," he said simply. "We take what we've learned about ourselves and we live." Marcus nodded, clutching his sketchpad filled with drawings that straddled the line between beautiful and terrible. "We create," he added. "We use this experience to fuel our passions, to dig deeper into who we really are." Elena reached out, taking Tyrell's hand in a gesture of comfort. "We heal," she murmured, "ourselves and each other, and we remember that strength comes in many forms." Tyrell squeezed her hand, his posture softer than it had been the night before. "We grow," he said. "We face our fears instead of running from them." Zara lowered her phone, which had finally run out of battery. "We connect," she said. "For real this time, not just through screens and filters." As they stood there, bonded by their shared trauma and triumph, a glint of movement caught their attention. Near the manor's entrance, the jester's mask lay on the ground. For a moment, it seemed to grin up at them before dissolving into mist. They turned away from Thornhaven Manor, walking together towards the city, awakening in the distance. Each step took them further from the night's horrors, but the lessons learned would remain. They had seen the darkness lurking behind their everyday masks and had chosen to embrace their true selves, flaws and all. As they reached the end of the long driveway, Olivia paused, looking back at the mansion one last time. "Happy Halloween," she whispered, a wry smile playing on her lips. The others chuckled, a release of tension and a celebration of survival. They parted ways at the main road, exchanging contact information and promises to meet again. As the rising sun cast long shadows behind them, each felt the weight of their experience settling into their bones. Olivia straightened her disheveled clothing, a newfound softness in her eyes. "We're different now," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus nodded, his artist's gaze taking in the changed faces of his companions. "We've seen behind our own masks," he added, "and we can't unsee it." "Perhaps that's the real gift," Dr. Chen mused, adjusting his glasses. "Terrible as it was, we now know ourselves more truly." Elena smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and hope on her face. "And we know we're strong enough to face our demons." Tyrell stretched, as if testing the limits of his new self. "No more running," he agreed. Zara looked at her blank phone screen, then back at the group. "No more hiding," she said firmly. They exchanged one last look of understanding before going their separate ways. As they stepped into their familiar lives, each carried a piece of that Halloween night with them, not as a burden, but as a talisman against future darkness. The masks were gone, but their power remained. The power to choose authenticity over illusion, courage over fear, and truth over comfortable lies. Remember, dear audience, the most terrifying monsters are the ones we create ourselves. What masks do you wear, and do you dare to take them off? Subscribe for more chilling tales from the Nightmare Maestro.